Thanks again for joining us. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Here are recent developments in the Israel-Hamas war. We learned just a while ago Israeli airstrike killed a senior Hezbollah commander alongside 2 other Hezbollah members and several civilians. Hezbollah and the Israeli Defense Forces stated that Al-Muhammad al-Debs, a senior commander in the Iran-backed group's elite Radwan forces, was killed. The IDF says he was one of the planners of a roadside bomb attack at Megiddo Junction in Israel in March 2023. In the meantime, the Israeli military is stepping up its campaign in Gaza. Forces have stormed Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, but assured staff they can continue treating patients. According to a statement, spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, says it has apprehended a number of suspects in the hospital, adding that the goal of what they call a precise and limited operation is to find Hamas and its suspects involved in the October 7 attack. The IDF also noted it has credible intelligence that Hamas is holding captives at the hospital, adding that the group's fighters appear to have been using the medical compound for their operations, a claim Hamas says are all lies. Earlier, Israeli forces ordered thousands of displaced people to evacuate the facility, as it had opened a secure route for civilians, but did not intend to evacuate patients and medics. Amid the siege on Nasser hospital, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press ahead with the offensive in the southern city of Rafah, where he has ordered the army to prepare for a ground assault. He says troops will advance in Rafah, defying international pleas to stop the incursion. Some 1.4 million Palestinians are sheltering in Rafah, which has already come under bombardment. Mr. Netanyahu vowed to press on with a powerful assault, declaring that Hamas, the group which controls Gaza, must be eliminated from the southern city. The World Health Organization is warning escalation in hostilities will severely impact its ability to provide health services to those in need. Gaza, it says, needs a new Marshall Plan to recover from Israel's ongoing attacks. Al-Najjar Hospital, like other hospitals in Rafah, has been overwhelmed with lots of patients due to continued strikes by Israeli forces. Officials are saying they can no longer keep up with the influx of patients as the health system is shrinking.
We visited Al-Najjar Hospital, a hospital that's been built and designed to house 65 patients. They have over 300 patients today, and the majority of patients are trauma patients, many of them just kids, frankly, and they are desperately trying every day to find the resources to meet the needs of this incredibly heavy load. But this degradation of the health system is really striking, and the only way forward is peace. The only way forward is a ceasefire, and we hope and pray it comes as soon as humanly possible.
There's a lot of talk about evacuation of people and a military intervention. Well, that would be a complete catastrophe. And first of all, there's no way where people can go. People can move. There's no room for any evacuation. It will have a disastrous effect on health, mortality, and morbidity.
Meanwhile, the head of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, Philippe Lazzarini, says nowhere is safe in Rafah following multiple bombardments by Israeli forces. Mr. Lazzarini also says the agency's financial problems will soon accelerate if funding suspended by countries is not resumed. It comes as over 10 countries withdrew funding to UNRWA in January after allegations some of its staff were involved in the October 7 Hamas attacks.
As you know, people are anxious and in fear of a possible large-scale military operation. If this military operation is taking place, The question is, where will the civilian go? There is absolutely no safe place in Rafah anymore, and the fear is that the number of people killed and injured might again significantly increase in a conflict where I reminded that already more than 100,000 people have been either killed, either injured, or are missing, which means in 4 months' time, 5% of the population, and we are still talking about the largest military offensive in the middle of a sea of displaced people. They are asked to move. The question is where to move. If you are in Rafah, you would see that from the border to Betlaya, which is 20 kilometers stretch, you only see plastic makeshift where hundreds of thousands of people are already living. Then we have talked about the allegation about the 12 staff. I just reminded all the action which have been taken by the agency. I started to terminate the contract. After that, we have initiated an investigation and was calling for cooperation for this investigation and reminding that it is of utmost importance that the government of Israel also cooperate so that we do have more than the allegations which have been shared with me. As you know also, the Secretary General has also commissioned a review of all the risk management system of the organization, mainly when it comes to neutrality issues, all these allegations about use of social media, about tunnel, about weapon, about political affiliation, all this needs to be reviewed to see how proactive the agency is in preventing first, but once an allegation happens, how to respond to this. So we expect this review to take place for the next 2 months. It will start as from tomorrow, and as an agency, we remain committed to implement its recommendation. You heard also about the tunnel, which has been discovered over the weekend, 20 meters below the headquarters. Now, I also told the member states that once the war is over, we need a board of inquiry. We need to look at all the situations where UN premises have been blatantly disrespected. Since the beginning of the war, more than 150 of our installations have been hit. We know that some installations have been completely destroyed. Hundreds of people have been killed. Thousands have been injured. And all this needs to be investigated independently together with the allegation of tunnel.
Staying with the UN, interim forces in Lebanon, UNIFIL says diplomatic efforts are needed to restore stability and preserve the safety of civilians. It comes as a cross-border attack between Israel and Lebanon are intensifying. UNIFIL was set up in 1978 to monitor the withdrawal of Israeli forces after they invaded Lebanon in reprisal for a Palestinian attack. A force expanded after the conflict between Hezbollah and Israel in 2006. Joining me now is public affairs analyst Ralph Obasioje. He joins us from Benin City. Ralph, thank you for joining us on the program. The IDF is intensifying its Great to see you. The IDF is intensifying its attacks on Hamas in Gaza. Do you think that they're hitting the targets, or is the number of casualties testament to Hamas' modus operandi to gain upper hand in this conflict?
I don't know how to really take that question, but you could see that on and off, even in areas that Israel had leveled. You will find that about 2 weeks ago, last week, Hamas militants were able to still kill about 14 Israeli soldiers. I think that is surprising to the Israeli forces. That is why you find that they had redoubled their resolve to hunt down the Hamas militants. You know, but maybe I'll wait for the next questions. The main thing is, one would have thought, I just listened to the Commissioner for United Nations Refugees High Commission saying that after the crisis, there will be a committee to review, to do a post-mortem review on why United Nations premises that are supposed to be sacred premises and neutral premises have been constantly bombarded by the Israeli forces. It's never happened before. Even when somebody is running for refuge, you get into the United Nations premises, you are presumed safe. But there is no territory, there is no space that has been spared by the Israeli Defense Forces in this their crusade to try to annihilate Hamas and obliterate them from the surface of the earth. But people are also now looking at what seems more like genocide and ethnic cleansing, or would I say nationality cleansing. I think the objective, only the Israelis can tell the whole world what the real objective is.
Well, the Israelis have said that, Hamas militants are hiding using civilians as human shields. So even when the civilians do run into UN facilities in Gaza, there is the possibility of some Hamas militants also being amongst them. But the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to press ahead with the offensive in Rafah, despite international condemnation and, of course, calls for withdrawal. Seeing as it is the last safe zone, as we understand, for the Palestinians in Gaza, do you think this decision is justified by the fact that Hamas militants, as I just said, are operating under the cover of civilians there?
I think in a situation like this, where you are the underdog, this is almost like a guerrilla war, not a formal warfare being carried out by Hamas. They will want to actually use any disguise. Okay, so dissolving into civilian crowds is a tactic they've always used. But like the British Prime Minister said yesterday, when is Israelis going to stop? Because the Hamas war machine is an amorphous, not really determinate group of militants. If you say you want to remove all of them from Rafah Hospital, there are many of them that have crossed into Jordan, into Lebanon, they are very mobile. So are you going to start chasing from one city to another these Hamas militants? But I would have thought that if the world was serious, because you talked about international condemnation, I've always opined on this channel, on your television, that is the lip service of the world powers. Because if the world powers wanted to prevent this war, they could have done that as they did in the Balkans. They could have created safe havens where Palestinian civilians can easily be quarantined. So like New Zealand, Australia, and Canada said yesterday, and like it was recorded by the British foreign minister, where are they going to evacuate these civilians to? Israel is telling them, we give you so time, about 24 hours, to leave Rafah Hospital. And yet, when they were all obeying the Israeli order, there were Israeli snappers shooting and killing anybody they thought is a militant on that long convoy. So would anybody feel safe to evacuate? Being evacuated to where? They can't go into Egypt. They can't go to northwest towards the territories that have been leveled by the Israeli forces. So this is hypocritical. It's a bit of oppressive. We've always said on this channel, we are all true to say Israel had the right to self-defense. But the modus operandi seems to suggest that there are other motives. You cannot seek to wipe out all Palestinians from the earth. There are many Palestinians living in many other countries, even in Europe and in the US. In the fullness of time, they will come back and continue the cause. It's been there for 60 years. It is situations that create militants. Situations. So, like I said on this channel, any average 60-year-old Palestinian, check all of them. They were all born into this trouble. If the world had attended to this disagreement, I am sure it would have been a bit different. If at the beginning of this war, the powers that be had been serious about a ceasefire, there could have been a United Nations force that would have condoned up the Gaza Strip and West Bank, and then they would then mediate a truce. First of all, the release of the hostages that were taken on October 7th. That was not there. So it was a bit quixotic looking at the most powerful man in the world reversing himself last week to say, oh, he now thinks that the methods that Israel has adopted has really been overboard. I mean, too late, not a little too late, very late in coming.
Yeah, I have wondered about that as well. I mean, you see the United States, I mean, it was just weeks ago that Secretary of State Antony Blinken was here, holding meetings with all of these people and then, condemning Israel's actions, but then they go behind their backs and then still give them aid, still give them military aid in order to continue with the war in Israel.
Paradoxical.
Yes, but I get the feeling that you're also blaming the UN, for Israel's actions in Gaza. When you say...
Very well.
Yeah. Could you talk some more about that?
Because the UN has been lame duck. They have been, how will I call it, flat-footed. They have been, for everything we know the UN for. The raison d'etre, for the existence of the UN has failed in this Israeli-Hamas face-off, because we know what the UN can mobilize. If the UN came out to condemn very strongly, instead of rhetorical statements, you can imagine the UN Secretary General saying yesterday, Guterres, saying yesterday that, the way Israel has bombarded UN premises, it has become difficult to deliver humanitarian aid. It has become difficult for doctors to work, UN doctors. Even Médecins Sans Frontières, the French humanitarian medical group, also mentioned it. Their doctors have been killed, their nurses have been killed. They buried one about 3 weeks ago. The question is this: the fact that if anything happens, the UN gets NATO and the rest to scramble into the skies and put a no-fly zone and everything. Couldn't they have done it in this situation? Children have been maimed. Defenseless women have been killed. If there is combat and you are killing those in combat, nobody will talk. We're talking about you stopping the life of a people, of a race. And that is where they are not going to get the support of the world. So the ordinary citizens are protesting all around the world. But I think it's a big disappointment. The same Netherlands, Australia and New Zealand and Canada that spoke, if they wanted to contribute troops into United Nations force, they can scramble troops in just 1 week to that territory and create a buffer zone so that ordinary persons who are not concerned with combat can be safe. We don't know where the United Nations Secretary General will come from. It could be a Lebanese. It could be a Palestinian. So why kill children? Why stop their life at the prime of their youth? Small children. When you see the pictures in the hospitals, it's a bit pathetic. In fact, this morning I just stopped watching, because nobody has gone there. If American soldiers go there to protect Al-Nasser Hospital or Al-Najjar Hospital, will Israeli troops shoot on American soldiers? No. The answer is no.
But this is
and I'm sure that the Middle East countries have not moved in because they don't want to start. They want to repeat the Yom Kippur War scenario or the 1967 war scenario. If not, they are all pinching themselves. This is happening at a period when Israel was making inroads into the Arab world, discussing peace deals with Saudi Arabia, discussing peace deals with Qatar. And this happened. Do they think that there can be peace like that? I was really shocked, Marachi, sorry for stopping you. I was shocked to find out that the United Nations interim force in Lebanon is still in Lebanon. So many years, you remember the Bekaa Valley War between Israel and Hezbollah.
Yeah,
UNIFIL is still in Lebanon. So why couldn't the UN
I hear you blaming, most of these countries in the West, but I don't see any blame laid on, the Arab partners for Palestine. How would you rate what they have done so far? A lot of them say. Well, a lot of them say that, Palestinians do not want to leave Gaza. That's the main problem, that they don't want to be displaced. They don't want to be displaced from their homeland. That's the reason why they cannot move, because when you ask where can they go, Israel has shut its borders against them. All the other countries, none of these other Arab countries are opening their borders to any of these Palestinians. So that does give some food for thought about that. How much support exactly they're giving to the people of Gaza during this war.
I can assure you that if not for the humanitarian...
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
If not for the humanitarian assistance from these Arab countries, monetary, medical, even the supplies that you got, only the humanitarian supplies through Egyptian border, only 1/4 of it is from the UN. All the other ones are from sympathetic Arab countries. The problem they have with the Palestinian population is that maybe, let me take it back to history a bit. Immediately Israel was created, the Palestinians were pushed out of the former Palestine, and 3/4 of them moved into Jordan. Wherever these people move into, it changes the demography of that country. They became a problem to King Hussein of Jordan because they were almost toppling his government.
Yes.
And so King Hussein had to give them an injection, eviction order, and give them 7 days. That was how they poured into Gaza Strip and the West Bank. But some of them moved into Lebanon, and today they've changed demography in Lebanon. Lebanon was a peaceful majority Christian territory, very cosmopolitan, European in nature, just like Alexandria in Egypt. But as soon as the Palestinians moved in there, people that didn't have access to education, they were just helping themselves, they changed demography. And today Lebanon is basically an Islamic country. So that is the caution that most Arab countries have. Where they want to help, they don't want this population, these militants, to come into their territories and begin to constitute nuisances, because they don't have, how will I call it, a means of livelihood. They begin to trade in weapons and so on and so forth. But in terms of warfare, these Arab countries, they had an Arab summit, and you heard the various foreign ministers speaking. They don't want to recreate the scenario of all the 3 wars they fought with Israel. They don't want to recreate that. Perhaps if we had a Yasser Arafat still alive in this kind of crisis, maybe you would have seen a different and probably
this war would not have happened in the first place if Yasser Arafat was still alive. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the diplomatic efforts so far in this war. Do you think that that aspect, that avenue already has broken down irreparably, seeing as Israeli offensive is extending even beyond Gaza? There have been reports of airstrikes in Lebanon hitting Hamas officials in that country.
They are tracking them up and down, and I'm sure, I begin to suspect they are using facial recognition, because you ask yourself, who do they, Israeli intelligence is one of the best in the world. So they track these people anywhere they are. But you can see that they've been very careful not to draw in Hezbollah. Because they join Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is a formidable fighting force, with enough arsenal of weapons, I think the Middle East will immediately be in crisis. But the diplomatic solutions I'm talking about, I have not seen anyone. It's been all lip service, and it's been all movement but no motion. Nobody has been serious about it. I have not seen it. When the Balkan crisis happened, the US was there. Before you knew it, NATO was there. Why are they not adopting the same approach? What is the essence? Is the UN really relevant anymore? Why should countries continue to pay dues to the UN when they cannot bite? They cannot back and bite. It's a bit surprising, and my heart bleeds for all the innocent Palestinians who have been killed, especially the children. Handsome children who should have been able to look up to the future and determine how they will contribute to a safe world, a world that will be prosperous economically and safe for everyone to dwell in. Diplomatic solutions I have not seen.
Yeah, the number of children killed, that's what makes the war feel completely useless. Thank you again, Ralph Obasoji, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Amarachi. You have a lovely evening.